Kia ora everyone, we're delving into some more short-lived LEGO themes here again with a gaming theme that breaks almost every rule from LEGO's core company values. This here is set 75972, the Dorado Showdown from LEGO Overwatch, a personal favourite theme of mine. The set here contains 419 pieces in total, just one away, and 3 minifigures, 2 of which were exclusive here, one of the few sets to reuse a minifigure across the theme. The set here released in 2019, at the very start of that year for the price of $30 USD before tax or $60 NZD. I actually got all of my Overwatch sets while I was privileged enough to be visiting Hong Kong in early 2019, where every LEGO set there is cheaper than the US price point, or at least that was the case when I was there. I'm not sure if anything's different nowadays, but from memory, I believe I paid around 200 Hong Kong dollar there, which is about 40 to 45 NZD. So for the Americans out there, I paid about 25 bucks for this at launch. Now today in the aftermarket space, you're looking at $70 sealed or $50 NZD in second-hand condition, which led me to believe that the Overwatch line has escaped that artificial rarity that LEGO adult fans put on sets, but actually no, once I saw the Diva and Reinhardt set, I realized that some of these are quite expensive actually. Now I was very excited to see these sets at the reveal. I was 19 years old and still studying at university. I was very deep into playing Overwatch. I think my love for Overwatch was similar to how I feel with most multiplayer games. They never really have the same effect on me like a single player game does, and I do still think that the 2016 Game of the Year catalog had much better picks than Overwatch, but I did sink a lot of time into that game with my friends back in the day, so the LEGO theme did feel like it was made for me. For those who aren't familiar, Overwatch was a first-person shooter multiplayer game with a very heavy emphasis on teamwork and characters. Each playable character featured their own special abilities, and if you asked 100 Overwatch players who their favourite characters were, you're bound to have a very wide range of unique answers. The Overwatch line was a surprise release to me because LEGO themselves have stated that they never plan to make sets based on first-person shooters, which was exactly what Overwatch was. Years later, the sequel game, Overwatch 2, also had proposed sets, which were put on hold indefinitely while LEGO worked out their brand relationship with Activision Blizzard, who were under fire at the time for misconduct in the workplace. It was a big ordeal that left a bad mark in the industry, and something I don't think we've moved beyond. It's been 3 years now since the release of the sequel game, and 3 years since the announced hiatus status of the sets, so it's safe to say that those sets are definitely cancelled. That's quite a lot of ground to cover before we even touch the set, so let's get into it. This was at the time one of my more hotly anticipated releases, because I love when LEGO make video game sets that incorporate the game mechanics. This set here is based on the escort game mode, in which one team needs to escort a payload to a destination, and the other team needs to stop them. The payload in question here is the truck that you see on screen, or more so it's the fusion core that's on the back of the truck. The truck's just carrying it. If I remember correctly, I think the point of the payload was to restore power to the city map there, so that's your objective there. This truck here looks strikingly close to how it appears in Game 2, I might add. That's why I think the set was so desired at release. I think I sound like a broken record on this, but I feel like we don't see as many playsets for licensed themes these days, a staple favourite of mine from the 2000s. The truck there features interesting details like the lack of wheels here and no doors. The doors were just bricks with some stickers placed on them, and I hated that idea at the time, and now in the present, I'm still really disappointed in how this kind of became the norm for quite a few sets. I tell a lie about the wheels though, there are some underneath there. They're the kind that are used for the playscale train sets, and this is so that the truck can still move around on a surface, but it makes it look like an illusion to look as though it's floating. It's effective, and it was cool to see at the time how well they nailed that translation. The fusion core build is really simple and very cool. It uses some nice smooth parts there that complement each other well for assembly. I always like seeing these dish pieces together like this, just because it feels very satisfying to put together. You're free to remove the roof of the truck there too, so that you can place a minifigure inside, which isn't necessary. The payload in the game doesn't feature a driver, but the LEGO group actually do state in the set's description, these sets here were all intended for 2 demographics in mind, the teenage fans and the older ones who want to display the set for the game that they love, and kids in the younger audience who want to actually play with the set. I tried demonstrating here using Tracer, but actually her hairpiece is way too tall for this, so really, it's only going to work with a handful of figures, maybe the ones released here. Then we move on to the market build for the city. The description for the set says that the build is of the iconic building and instantly recognizable one, so I assume it's based on the starting location, which we see in the preliminary images too, but my memory's a little hazy there. I don't recall the starting area looking like this, but anyway, I remember the building being popular online for the bells there, which you could use to make little tunes and such, like the Futurama theme song. And looking at the source material there, I think they nailed the key design there, but man is this thing thin. It was actually a pretty big disappointment for me at the time, but eventually over time, I've come around to being used to it. Before delving in though, I want to take a look at the market stand which you actually build alongside the payload. We've got a string of lights there and a decoration there that celebrates Festival de la Cruz, and down below is a market stand with some fruits of bananas and some cherries. My favorite inclusion here is something seen in many Overwatch sets. It's the small health pickup. Health pickups were located all over the map, and like I mentioned earlier, I love when LEGO incorporate the video game mechanics in their sets. Why else would you try and make sets based on video games then? The market there has a green roof piece that just folds up like so, and the fruits in the box are also on a hinge piece for some movement. Now as for the building, this is one of the highlights here, and I do agree it is a rather iconic building from the game, but the size here just really bothers me. It's that classic facade structure that LEGO did in the early 2000s with themes like SpongeBob. It's the type of set I would love to have built up on display so I could put all my minifigures there, but there's just not a whole lot of room to do so. I really like the extruding details there that make up the key design for the windows and the door frame. The windows both have shutters too, which are interactive so that your heroes can hide behind them or attack once open. The roof of the set, if you'd be so generous to call it that, appears on hinges and can be moved up like so. And that kind of does it for the building's details. I will also say that the ground plates I wish were just one long sturdy piece instead of these 3 plates together, because I found that this regularly falls apart if you aren't careful enough. But actually the final thing to cover there are the cool stickers. I actually quite like the stickers in the Overwatch line. They all reference parts from the game that wouldn't be adapted otherwise. We have here a team of players with the poster of Morrison, and it looks like there's Tracer, Winston, Mercy, and Reinhardt. We then have a poster of Lucio's frog logo, and we can flip the build around to see the other side of the walls, which feature stickers on the outside and the inside. Inside there we've got Jack Morrison, the identity of Soldier 76, which is one of the minifigures there in the set. And the other side there features a sticker of Gabriel Reyes shrugging, the identity of Reaper, who is also one of the minifigures included in the set. And speaking of minifigures, let's take a look at these really cool inclusions, because the Overwatch line was pretty stellar when it came to the minifigures. 2 of these guys are exclusive and 2 of my all-time favorites, and they all feature something rather unique to the set. First up here is Soldier 76, one of the more popular characters for newcomers to the game, based on the fact that he plays just like your average Call of Duty controlled character. I love this minifigure. The hairpiece works really well for him, though I will say I'm usually a stickler when it comes to masks being printed on. I'm not a big fan of that design. I prefer it if the mask is its own separate piece, but the mask in the game isn't nearly as big enough to justify that kind of treatment, so I understand the reasoning behind this one here. He features a pretty cool jacket with the 76 printing on the back there. I actually hadn't realized until reading about these while making these videos, no one from the Overwatch line features any arm printing, which I will admit does change my judgment on them a little bit. Not a whole lot, but it is rather disappointing because the designs in the game are stellar. Soldier 76 also features no printing for his legs, but there's not a whole lot that they could have done there anyway, so in my eyes they're forgiven. There's no printing on the back of his head, which I don't show in this clip anyway. It would have been pretty cool to have gotten an unmasked version of him and Reaper, but that's okay, something that I think they might have been saving for the next releases if they ever got the chance. Soldier 76 here and every Overwatch minifigure was notable for including guns, but LEGO have a thing against weaponry like this, so every major weapon was actually brick built instead, and this appears to have been a controversial opinion, but for me, I absolutely love this idea and execution. I'm showing off traces here actually because almost every set included this specific gun piece, which was made specially for this line of sets. The gun has attachment studs so that each weapon could be customized and detailed, so you can see the differences here between what hers look like, basically remaining default, and what his rifle ends up looking like once all those parts have been added on. A comparison too for the shotguns that Reaper uses, which are a bit more minimal in their design rather than that massive rifle there. I understand why people don't like these. They do admittedly look rather goofy, and that throws the minifigures off balance too, but I have to say, these actually became pretty standard for me to expect in sets, and I wanted to see more and more of these. I just really love brick-built weapons like this. Part of me thinks that it looks cooler than some specially molded pieces sometimes, occasionally. But speaking of Reaper's guns there, this here is Reaper, who was the only minifigure that did not remain exclusive here in Wave 1. Reaper would be included in the most expensive set, and actually featured some brand new detailing. I think the Reaper figure is stellar in his design, a robo-skeleton look with some very cool military-esque detailing for the torso, and let's not forget that cloak design either. And again, like Soldier 76, there's no detailing on the legs, but for Reaper, that's rather unforgivable. He does feature some very cool boots in the game, which could have made for some nice printing. The cape though for me makes up for all of the lack of printing. Exclusive to this theme there, they made a cape which also features some shoulder pads there. It's an amazing evolution of that piece, and it's a shame that LEGO kinda just stopped there when they were so close to making a trench coat design there. If I remove that cape there to show the extra detail on his back, more simple stuff but very effective. I mentioned before that Reaper does appear in another set. The unique inclusion there features the Ghostly Legs piece, which I think started from maybe the Ninjago line. It's a piece specifically reused for the Dementors for Harry Potter. And then finally we have here Jesse McCree, who has since been renamed to Cole Cassidy in Overwatch 2. The reason behind the name change there was due to controversy surrounding the original name's connection to a former employee. So Cassidy here appears as a future-like cowboy with some high highs and some very specific low lows that I think only bother people like myself. I have him here with his extra hairpiece and revolver, and he's holding his hat. That's your little hint. The best part of this minifigure is that shoulder cape, which looks like this once you remove it from that figure. Again, it's another great material piece for figures, and LEGO haven't really done too much like this since. This also gives us a better look at the detail on his back there, and awesome, this figure actually does feature leg printing, which looks pretty solid. Removing the hairpiece and donning his hat, Cassidy looks like this, and in 2019, I thought it was a sin for LEGO to still be doing this. Hats without hairpieces should have been an outdated thing that we left behind a long time ago. A very distracting style for me, so I personally never displayed him with his hat. Fast forward a few years later, and LEGO ended up releasing some Indiana Jones sets, which featured a brand new amazing hair hat combo piece for Indy, and I praised those sets at the time because you actually got given extras in every set for some reason. Also rewind back to the Lone Ranger set, which released a brand new really cool revolver piece, which they made just for that theme, and like Indiana Jones, those sets included extras. Taking those two favorite parts of mine, we can now upgrade Cassidy here to become a bit more better looking overall. His hair does lose its length unfortunately, but I would rather he keeps having hair than suddenly turns bald. The instructions for the set here appeared in two booklets. Booklet 1 was the payload and the market stand, and booklet 2 was the building. Inside we have the basic instructions, and it appears to have no theming whatsoever. This here's what current LEGO instructions look like, so it's possible they were trying to phase this out as early as 2019, or possibly earlier. The back of the Dorado building one shows the set all complete. We then have the inventory list next, and the back features just one advertisement for the Watchpoint Gibraltar set. It also showcases how the bigger set of the wave can combine with the smaller set of the wave, which was a very cool feature to see because the smaller set is actually the payload in-game and the bigger set is the payload's destination. Awesome job, LEGO team. Every single LEGO Overwatch set was improved immensely with the addition of every other figure, so now we have a really great display of what your typical game would be. This line may not be appealing to those unfamiliar with the game of Overwatch, but for me, this was a dream. Overwatch is by no means my favorite video game, but to see LEGO take a first-person shooter IP, and one that was mostly targeted for teens and an older audience, was uncharted territory. And since the Overwatch line ended, LEGO themselves covered quite a few video game lines, with Nintendo properties and Sonic. It's been a pretty wild ride for the gamers and for the LEGO freaks out there, and I just hope to see them cater to my needs again sometime soon in the future. If you enjoyed this look at a LEGO Overwatch set, liking this video here and subscribing to the channel does help to support more videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching everyone, ka kite anō, hope to see you all next time.